Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for a high value exit. I'm your host, Pete Vera, and today I'm joined by Nate Littlewood, founder of Future Ready and host of the podcast Profits on Purpose. Nate helps e-commerce and CPG business owners master cash flow, profitability, and fundraising decisions so they can scale with clarity. Nate, excited to have you on the show. Welcome to the podcast.
Likewise, excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to dive in here. For listeners that haven't heard of you before, you mind sharing a bit about your background? Yeah, maybe where you're from and then how you got into business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nate, obviously, I run a business called Future Ready CFO, which is a fractional CFO consulting business, basically specializing in e-commerce and consumer products companies. So, what all of my clients have in common is that they're all investing in and figuring out how to finance and efficiently deliver inventory to customers, right? They're all physical goods type companies. Basically, what I do is work with them to take them from a state of chaos and confusion when it comes to numbers and finance to one of clarity and confidence. And I work with these founders to really help them understand how to use their financials as a strategic ally to empower growth and honestly, at the end of the day, Peter, just help them sleep better at night and be less stressed about the company.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of other CFOs in this space, I've actually had first-hand experience running my own e-commerce business. And in fact, it's what I was doing for 6 or 7 years before getting into this. So it was, a modest company, but we started with a small Kickstarter campaign, bootstrapped it into a 7-figure business. Along the way, I also did some mentoring and was in fact a lead mentor at a New York City based accelerator program called Food Future Co. And before getting into the world of startups and entrepreneurships, which for me was about a decade ago now. Before that, I spent about the first half of my career working on Wall Street at a global investment bank. And that's actually what took me from Australia originally to Canada for a couple of years and obviously now down here in New York. Uh, Basically, my mission is to support purpose-led founders and try to eliminate or at least reduce what is currently the number one reason that these businesses fail, which is them running out of cash or not
Mm,
understanding some aspect of their finances. Like, there's a whole lot of surveys and polls on this. People have cut and sliced the data different ways. But at the end of the day, like the number one reason startup businesses fail is usually money related. And
mm.
my mission is to try to help that no longer be the case. I want to put an end to finance and money problems being the reason that these businesses fail.
Oh, I love it. And it's great you have the financial background, a operator background, and you can use those experience to give more practical, realistic advice. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think having been an owner operator before, it really helps when dealing with other founders because, I have a extreme amount of empathy for their position and situations that they're in, right? Like, I know what it's like to be stressed about making payroll next month. I've had to deal with, high cost MCA lenders to try to
Mhm.
finance, a purchase order last minute. Like I've made a lot of the finance mistakes that, founders make myself. And, through that firsthand experience, I think it really helps me in terms of, communicating with and engaging with people now.
Definitely. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about those days. Is at Urban Leaf, right? It was the
That's
business.
correct. Yep. 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 Yep.
Yeah. Could you walk us through how you scaled that business? What were some of the growth levers that mattered most to Urban Leaf?
Yeah, so I should tell you a little bit about what the business actually did. We were basically an indoor urban gardening company focusing specifically on edible plants and crops. So think mushrooms, think microgreens. We had some mini fruit and veggie stuff, hydroponics, grow lights, that sort of stuff. So the mission of the company was really all about trying to get more people growing food in urban spaces. In terms of how we grew that, I would say our main growth levers were through content, which spills over into SEO, education. We built a pretty solid YouTube channel with all sorts of, instructional videos and tutorials. We had a whole lot of lead magnet type resources like ebooks and guides, and
Yeah.
also built a pretty big Facebook community along the way, like a private Facebook group where people would come in and get tips and ask questions. In terms of the numbers, though, one of, if not the biggest driver was really Amazon. We had a portion of our catalog that we considered kind of, entry products, which were admittedly more, commodity in nature, but we were promoting them on Amazon and using them as kind of our starting point to establish a relationship with these customers and trying
Mm.
to meet demand for existing search queries that people are already running. Trying to put things in people's hands and say, hey, you were looking for seeds or hydroponic supplies, whatever. Here we are. We're Open Leaf. This is what we're about. And by the way, we've got a lot more, way more interesting stuff on the website if you'd like to come check that out as well.
That's awesome. Very unique. So not necessarily using it to sell on Amazon, but also to prospect.
Right. So we were primarily thinking about it as a customer acquisition tool. Quite frankly, in a lot of the product categories that we're in, the margins were not fantastic. So, I'm not going to lie and tell you that there was oodles and oodles of profit to be made selling, fairly commodity like products on Amazon, because it's not. It's a brutally tough game. But, if you can get some small percentage of them curious enough and interested enough in the product and brand and spark enough curiosity for them to, jump on Google and do a search for you, then you're in action, right? That's where
Yeah.
the real money making starts.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Is there anything you would do differently if you had to restart again today?
Oh my God, everything I would do differently. I mean, yeah. I mean, looking back, it was one of the most valuable learning and educational experiences, I've had in my life. I mean, you can read a gazillion books and I mean, I did a freaking MBA before that. Like going to university and learning this stuff is absolutely nothing compared to actually having had the firsthand experience. But to answer your question on what I would do differently, I mean, quite truthfully, I wouldn't have done it at all. And let me clarify what I mean by that. When I first became interested in entrepreneurship, it was like, a year or two after having moved to New York. I'd really not thought about the world of entrepreneurship much before that. But I kind of got to New York. I was still working on Wall Street at the time. And I thought, oh, there's all these freaking founders and entrepreneurs around here. What's this all about? And I was curious. I learned more about it. And the more I learned about entrepreneurship, I was like, wow, you mean there's a job where you can build cool stuff, you get to solve interesting problems, there's always variety. And I was like, damn, like sign me up. I should have been doing this all along. And I was, almost kicking myself for not discovering it earlier. And I guess like a lot of people that stumble across entrepreneurship, my initial response was to say, hey, I want to be the CEO and founder. I want to start my own thing. I want my own business. I want my own product and brand. And that's what I did. What I realized over the course of doing that is that my place in this ecosystem where I can add the most value is actually not as the brand founder and CEO.
Mm.
There were parts of that role that I really liked and enjoyed and was good at. And no surprises, it was kind of the data analytics operation, like anything to do with numbers and forecasting. Like, I love that stuff. But especially for a consumer products founder, there's a huge side of branding, marketing, customer acquisition, Meta, Google, blah, 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 that quite frankly, I didn't really care for that much. And it
Mm.
just didn't excite me and get me up in the morning. And I think as a result of that, it was part of the business that I neglected. I probably should have done more in that area, or at least had a co-founder who was really, really good at it, which mine wasn't. He was, more an engineering technical type. So anyway, I guess looking back, I now realize that my role in this ecosystem and where I'm going to add the most value is not being the founder and CEO, but the guy sitting right next to him. I'm his wingman. I'm his right
Mm,
hand man. I'm the guy who's crunching the numbers for him, telling him what the data says, and feeding him suggestions about how to navigate the next big decision that we have on the horizon.
gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So, well, maybe it took that experience for you to realize where you wanted to focus, right?
Yeah, it did. It did. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So, what are you mentioned some numbers? What are some metrics that you think are the most crucial that business owners track, on a daily or weekly basis?
Well, I can really talk to my space, which is, physical products, obviously. I guess some of the most important metrics, I mean, if you were to give me a short list and say, hey, like you can only have a handful of numbers to look at, I would be looking at the ongoing relationship between CAC and lifetime gross profit, not
Mm,
lifetime value, which is linked to revenue. I want to take lifetime value, multiply it by gross profit to get lifetime gross profit, which is essentially the cumulative or sum of all of the profit that we can generate over the duration of a customer relationship, and then compare that to CAC, which is how much is it costing us to buy that profit stream, right? So that really tells me about the profit generating engine of a business and how scalable that engine is. Not that your business necessarily has to grow or acquire customers by paying Meta and Google, but it's very, very helpful if a business like this can do that economically and profitably. And as long as that, profit generating engine is making sense, like if the business is unprofitable, then it's really just a matter of kind of growing the engine, right? If we're not
mm,
profitable today, but we have positive unit economics, then maybe we can double or triple the size of the engine, and then we're a chance to cover the overheads that we're currently carrying, right? We can kind of scale into profitability, if you will. So that would be a super important one, especially for bootstrapped businesses and ones where they're operating in an environment of cash scarcity and scarcity. I want to see their cash conversion cycle. In other words, days of inventory plus days of receivables, less days payable. The cash conversion cycle basically is telling us how quickly cash is moving through the business. And that's giving me insights into how efficiently that founder or that team is managing their scarcest resource, i.e., cash, right? Because
mm.
the quicker we can use that cash, the more efficiently we can have it spinning through the business, the more opportunities we have to reinvest it in growth. And a very, very common mistake I see founders making is prolonged cash conversion cycles, usually from way too much stuff held in inventory. And they're, unintentionally just putting a throttle on their own growth by doing that. It also, I mean, from a CFO angle, I really like the current ratio, which is current assets divided by current liabilities. The reason that
Mm,
I like that is because it gives me a very, very accurate read on what the founder's world is like. If you have a low current ratio, which means you've got small amount of assets and inventory compared to debt and accounts payable, then there's a good chance that that founder is spending a huge amount of time looking at their bank balance, figuring out which vendors to pay, and essentially, playing a short-term juggling act with cash. And if a founder's doing that, it tells me that they are not spending a lot of time on bigger picture strategic growth issues, i.e., doing what they're really supposed to be doing.
mm,
So if I see a low current ratio, then I know that if I can solve that cash situation or cash problem for that founder, it's going to be a huge burden relief from them. And their headspace can then be dedicated to, the things that they really should be focusing on. And usually the business as a whole benefits from that, right? So yeah,
yeah.
there's a short list of metrics I like.
I love it. Lifetime gross profit to CAC, customer conversion cycle, and current ratio. Okay.
Yeah. The second one was cash conversion cycle, but yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The basically you're trying to figure out how much cash you need in the business to keep it running, right? Working capital.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's linked to working capital. Exactly.
how do you plan, as a business is trying to grow and expand, how do you Do you have any recommendations for scheduling some expenses that are involved in that inventory, marketing, or hiring new people?
Well, I mean, that is really all the work of a CFO, right? It's like forecasting this and kind of predicting and looking into the future. The thing with forecasting and projections is there is a 100% probability that you're going to get it wrong. No one's forecasts are ever spot on. But that's really not the point.
Mm,
Really, what we're trying to do with financial forecasting and projecting is just make out some shapes of things that might be on the horizon, right? We might not know precisely how deep it is or, how many feet it is off the side of the road, but we want to be able to see a pothole before we get there. Okay. We want to see a tree hanging over, the right-hand lane or whatever it is. So really what we're trying to do with forecasts, financial forecasts and projections is just get a clearer view into the future. And the reason for that is the more time that we have to prepare it, the better prepared we can be as founders and operators. So, say for example, you suddenly discover there's a pothole. Oh, damn, like I'm going to have a cash shortage 2 days from now, right? You don't have a lot of options to deal with that, right? You're going to
mm,
be a very desperate borrower. You're going to have to go to the highest cost lenders out there because you don't have time for a lengthy underwriting and review and, even a search process for a competitive lender. And so you're probably going to get ripped off.
mhm.
Contrast that, if we can see that pothole or cash shortage 3 months out, we got plenty of time to do a review. Like we can look at dozens of options. We can even probably get a couple of these lenders to enter into a bidding war against each other and compete for your business. And we have time to go through lengthier underwriting processes. Heck, we can potentially even do something to our overheads or maybe delay a purchase order something to maybe avoid the pothole altogether, right? If we can see it far enough out, we might be able to course correct a little bit, swerve to one side, and maybe we don't have a need for the debt or the borrowing at all, for example.
Mm,
So really, it's about giving you more time to react and respond to obstacles that you might see on the road ahead of you.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Forecasting out. Yeah, that's a really the name of the game, I feel like, in terms of planning and trying to grow without running out of cash.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
How should business owners think about debt? Do you think of it as kind of a necessary evil sometimes to grow, or are you of the opinion it should just be bootstrapped if you can?
There's no clean answer to that. And like a lot of questions, it kind of depends. I mean, it depends in this case what you're going to do with the debt. The way that I would encourage people to think about it is that when you are the owner and operator of a business, you're in a way behaving a little bit like an investor. Okay. Your job is to source capital from a number of different sources, one of which is debt, but you could also source capital from investors. A great way to source capital is by selling stuff to customers, sell your inventory. That's a source of capital. You could pull money out of grants or accounts receivable, accounts payable. Like there's a lot of places that a founder and operator can potentially get capital from. Then we have to make decisions about how we're going to invest that capital. And some common applications could be people. It could be buying ads. It could be buying inventory. It could be, opening up a new sales channel or developing a new product, whatever. Like there's all different things that we could put that capital into. So really what I care about is whether or not the returns that we're going to generate are greater than whatever we had to pay for that capital, right? If you're
Mm,
paying 20% interest on a loan, but you can generate a 50 or 100% return on that money, great. Go, you good thing, keep going. Like you've just netted the difference. Whatever the difference is between your return and what the capital's costing you is your profit that you get to keep. The problem is obviously when we get into situations where those tables are skewed the other way and what we're paying for capital is more than the economic profit or rent that we're generating from investing the capital. In other words, we're borrowing money for inventory. It's a high cost loan. But then when we actually sell that inventory, we're not making a very big margin on it. And so the margin is not enough to pay the interest bill. That's where, get into trouble. So it's tough for me to say whether or not debt is a bad thing. I would say it's a tool, it's an instrument. If used carefully and in the right way, yes, it can have great advantages. But if you're an idiot with it and you don't know how to use it properly, it's also very easy to hurt yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I appreciate that very kind of simple explanation. If you get an ROI from taking out a loan, then then a green light, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not. I was going to ask, do you have a preference of a type of capital or loan to pursue? But it's from that lens, it sounds like not necessarily just whatever the interest rate is and weighing that cost benefit analysis, what you'd be able to return, how much revenue you'd be able to generate with it.
Yeah, I think what you just described is most of it. I would add some nuances there. It's a little bit more complicated than just looking at the interest rate or APR. All of these facilities and loans are a little bit different in terms of their maturity profiles, the security that they might take, discounts for early repayment, what the maturity profile even looks like. So really what we need to do is kind of a risk return analysis. And what I'm trying to help people with is basically make bets or make decisions where the odds are stacked in their favor, right? Things can always go wrong, right? Like Facebook might block us, or the warehouse might burn down. Like there's always things that could potentially go wrong. But what I'm trying to do is minimize downside risk and the severity or magnitude or likelihood that something goes wrong, and at the same time increase our chances for something going right. And the more often we can do that, the better the bets become skewed in our favor. And if we're placing bets regularly that are consistently skewed in our favor, that's a recipe for economic growth. Like that's how you grow profit in a business. Okay. Does that
Got
make
it.
sense?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that insight. Yeah, do you use any tools to help you do that analysis?
So not really. I mean, I do a lot of it in spreadsheets, using XIRR calculations and that sort of thing. Whenever I am running one of these processes for my clients, I'm usually building out spreadsheets to, calculate the various metrics and numbers that I need to look at. I'm sure there's probably some tools out there for doing it, but I kind of do it the old fashioned way, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've been comfortable doing it that way for years and years. Why break if it's not fixed, right? Or why fix it if
Yeah.
it's not broken?
Yeah.
Do you use any AI in your business?
I do. Yeah. So I use AI a lot already unsurprisingly on a lot of the, marketing content creation stuff. A lot of that is AI foundations with human intervention kind of sprinkled on top. You always have to humanize the stuff that they come up with. But I use it for, certainly thinking about strategy. I use it for reviewing a lot of our marketing data and figuring out what is or isn't working. I'm in the process of figuring out how to do more of it in the operational side of my business. And I suspect that within 12 months, CFOs aren't going to be building models and doing projections like I do today with spreadsheets anymore. Really just a matter of time before financial model building kind of disappears as a
Mm,
profession and industry. And I'm working on that, building custom AI agents to, do the month-on-month analysis and look at, what happened compared to what was our budget and what went wrong
right.
and break down, do the monthly reviews. I also offer kind of a entry slash lead magnet product called a hidden profit audit, where it costs about $1,000 and takes a week. And essentially, I will guarantee you that I can find at least $10,000 of profit leaks in your business. The last couple I've done, I've actually found more like $300,000 of profit
Wow.
leaks for the founders. And this is for, a product that costs $1,000 up front. So like the ROI on this thing is insane. But anyway, I'm eventually going to figure out how to do a lot of that with AI, which is
Yeah.
basically ingesting all of a brand's like Shopify data, their financial data, their inventory data, running all the analysis for them. and, spitting out the benchmarks and reports and, basically diagnosing their business. It's kind of like, taking your business to the doctor, if you will, and getting your health tests. Like, I just have to tell the doctor what healthy looks like, what's problematic, and what are some common reasons that people get unhealthy. And then I figure the AI should be able to do a lot of this for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's exciting to see where it's going. That's a lot of I've a lot of feedback from people I interview is it's really good at analyzing data, doing certain tasks, but most of the time, especially with like the marketing play, right? It's about it maybe gets like it can get almost maybe 90%, but you absolutely need to sprinkle that human element on
Definitely.
top, or else it's very obvious.
Embarrassing otherwise.
Yeah, no, and I love that. You have some direct applications with modeling and so forth. Where do you, it, I think it's really important, especially people in your industry, to start using it and adapt with it, or
Yeah.
else they could become extinct, like you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
Do you see
So
where do you
true.
see it going in the future?
Phew, that's an interesting question. I mean, I'm by no stretch of the imagination an AI expert here, but let me throw out some things that I think would be cool to see happen and which I think AI can probably do in the not too distant future. I mean, all of the listen, let me take a step back here. We're in 2026, right? No one in the year 2026 is suffering from a lack of data, right? We're all drowning with it. Our problem is not that we don't have enough data. Our problem is figuring out what are the signal, how to differentiate the signals from the noise, and what is the 99% of the data that we should ignoring and the 1 or 2% that we actually need to pay attention to. So I think that we're probably not too far away from having fully integrated systems that are sucking in your Google Analytics, your GA4 data, your all the data from your ad buying accounts, your Meta, your Google, all of your Shopify data, all of your inventory management system data, all of your accounting data, and basically, being a co-pilot for your entire business. And you know, noticing things like, hey, there's been a spike in this search query. All of a sudden, more people are coming to your site with this specific query. That must mean that our sales forecast for this SKU is probably conservative. We should place a new purchase order. Because we've just reached 5,000 units, let me look at the last correspondence I had with that supplier. We're now hit, a higher MOQ or whatever. Therefore, we can negotiate a better rate. And, bang, we need to connect all those dots going from a search query to renegotiating with a supplier or vendor and, getting the product wherever it needs to be. I think, I mean, it's scary to think where this could all take us. I think what one of the big themes of the next year or two in the consumer product space is that AI is also going to commoditize customer acquisition. Once upon a time, creative, whether it was written or, visuals and images, creative was a little bit of a moat for a lot of brands. And you could clearly tell the difference between a brand who's good with creative and visual storytelling and copywriting and one who wasn't, right? What AI is now enabling and empowering is all the people who aren't good at that stuff. And what was previously a hurdle or, a barrier to entry for them when it came to branding, marketing, customer acquisition, ad copy, and so forth, is rapidly disappearing as a barrier. So, what's going to happen is that there'll be more competition for clicks and impressions and eyeballs. The cost of these impressions is going to go up because there's a finite amount of attention and eyeballs on screens. When there's more competition, the price has to rise. So, everyone's going to be paying more to acquire these customers. And, Zuckerberg and co are only going to sell this to the highest bidder. And what is going to become the differentiator between the brands that make it and those that don't, I think is really going to be about, product and customer experience.
Mhm.
Like the brand that has the best product in a world where customer acquisition is commoditized is going to be the one that drives customers back. And for that reason, I'm really bullish on brands that are optimizing for product and, customer experience.
Mm, yeah, I love that answer. First, you said you don't think about AI much, but you were very eloquent in that response. I appreciate it.
No problems.
Yeah, the signal versus noise thing, I love that concept. It's applies to a lot of areas in life. I think it was Jeff Bezos that I've heard that from
Mhm.
initially,
Mhm.
but the
Awesome.
more AI can help with that. What'd you say?
Someone much smarter than me came up with it. It was certainly not my expression.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. The more AI can help with that, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a great conversation today, Nate. I always leave the last question as one practical tip business owners can implement this week.
One practical tip. I'm trying to think through something that's as broadly applicable as possible and that almost every business owner could do. Here's what I got for you. And I do this with a lot of my clients, use a time tracking app for a month and categorize how you're spending time based on marketing, sales, operations, HR, finance, team meetings, emails, whatever it is. There's free tools you can use this. I like one called Toggle, Toggl. They have a free plan. After a month, take that data on how you're spending time and put it into AI and ask it to diagnose it for you and tell you what you might be doing well and what you're doing efficiently. And if you kind of follow on with a few prompts about like, hey, what does this imply for my efficiency as a business operator? Who should I be hiring to help me? Who could make my life easier? I think you'll get some really, really interesting insights from doing an exercise like that.
That's a great one. That's a good way to end it. You got to manage yourself before you can manage your business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, want to give you the floor if you have any last words, plugs for your business, and where can listeners find you the easiest?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, posting there most days. My name again is Nate, Nate Littlewood. It should be pretty easy to find. It's a fairly unique name. The website is futurereadycfo.com. And if you go to the service section or services section, you'll find that hidden profit I was talking about. I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I legit think it is one of the best deals going around at the moment in the ecom/finance space. The ROI that I've been delivering on that from, the people that are taking it is just mind-boggling. And, what people are doing with the information is really cool as well. So feel free to check that out. Otherwise, happy to chat about whatever else you may have on your mind.
Sounds good, Nate. Yeah, I'll leave that in the show notes. Thank you for coming on today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Really.